Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the channel again. Many of you asked me about installing Manjaro with BTRFS and Snapper, and that's what I do in this video. Let's get going. So here we go, we put it up now, the Manjaro Architect ISO, and we are ready to go. So the first thing I want to do is to choose my key table because I don't have a US keyboard. So let me change this very quickly. And I'll change also my time zone, and I'll go to Europe, and right now I am in Switzerland, so I'll select my city, and driver free is fine. If you have an NVIDIA card, you might want to hit here and select non-free, but in my case it's fine. And then we can just go ahead and boot Manjaro Architect. So there we go. Now we can log in, and as we can see here, we have the username and the password already provided to us. So let's log in with the username Manjaro and the password Manjaro. There you go. Now I'm on a virtual machine here, and I'm going to do a small tweak here so that I can install Manjaro Architect from my terminal via SSH, as the screen resolution is much better on my terminal. So I'll check first for my IP, so I'll type in IP space A, and I see I have an IP down there ending with 248. So let me clean up the terminal and synchronize once the servers by typing in sudo pacman -s and hit enter. It's going to take a second to do that. And there you go. So let me install openssh and activate it so that I can go back to my terminal. So let me type in sudo pacman -s openssh and hit enter. Proceed with installation here and proceed with installation of openssh. There you go. Now I need to start the system. So I'll type in sudo system ctl start sshd and hit enter. And there you go. Again, I'll check my IP. So I have an IP ending with 248, so I can switch over to my main terminal. And let me increase the font sizes here. And I can type in now SSH Manjaro at 192.168.122.248 and hit enter. Accept the fingerprint, enter my password, which is Manjaro, and hit enter. And now I'm logged in. So let me clean up the terminal. So now we can start a setup. So we'll just type in setup here, which will launch the Architect script. And there you go. So we can select the language. This is our first step. So I'm going to go with English here, which is already selected. So I'll just hit enter here. Gonna take a moment to update the database. There you go. So welcome to Manjaro Architect. This installer will download the latest packages from the Manjaro repositories. That's fine with me. So I'll just hit enter here to accept. Now we have several steps here we can perform. Now we need to do the prepare installation step. This is obvious. Then we have the choice to create a desktop system, a CLI system, or a command line interface system, or a custom system. So for this tutorial, I'm going to go with the desktop system, and I'm going to integrate in the desktop system Snapper and the Snapper GUI. Anyway, before we do this, we need to prepare the system by going through the first step, which is prepare installation. So it's already selected here, so I'll just hit enter. And the first step is to enable the virtual console. So let's do this by hitting enter. And the key map is US, which is wrong in my case. So I'll have to go to change here and hit enter. And I'll select my keyboard which starts with DE. And I need to find the one which has Latin 1, which is this one right here. And then I just hit enter. There you go. Now we can list the devices. This is an optional step. If I do that, I have only my HD in there. So nothing interesting to see here. So let's go back. Now the next step is the important one, and that is partitioning the disk. So let's hit enter here. And this is the only disk I have, so that's fine, and I can hit enter here. Now we have several options here on how we want to partition the disk. We can securely wipe the device, but this is optional, and I'm not going to do this right now. Then we can choose automatic partitioning, or we can use one of the partitioning tools we used to use in Linux, which is cfdisk, cgdisk, fdisk, gdisk, and parted. Well, for this tutorial, I'm going to go with automatic partitions because I'm going to have anyway just one boot partition and a root partition. So I'll go for automatic partitioning and hit enter. So as you can see here, this automatic partition will create a 512 megabyte boot partition and also a root partition using the rest of the space. If you want to use swap, you can select swap file during the mounting, which we're going to do later. So yes, I wish to continue, so I'll just hit enter here. And the partitions are being created now. We have a VDA1 partition of 512 megabytes. This is our boot partition. And VDA2 is our root partition. So everything looks good and we can hit back. Now I don't need to create any RAID here, so I can skip this step. Same goes for logical volume and LUKS encryption and also ZFS. So let's go now to the mount partitions. So I hit enter here. And it's just warning us that we need to ensure that we make the correct choices when we mount the partitions and format them. So that's fine with me. I just hit enter here. So now it asks us to select the root partition. And we saw before the root partition is VDA2. So I'll move down to VDA2 here and hit enter. And now we can select which file system we want to format the partition for. So because we want to install Snapper and use BTRFS, we need to go, of course, to the BTRFS file system and hit enter. Now it's warning us that all data will be wiped from the partition, and that's fine with me, so I'll just hit enter here. And now we can select some options for the partition. So we are using a BTRFS file system, and I want to go with the compression type LZO because it's the fastest type. And we can go through other options here, but at the moment I don't see anything that I want to use, so I'll just hit enter. And I confirm the request here to format the partition with these options, and the mount was successful. So it asks us now if we want to create subvolumes in it, and I'll say yes. Now we can do it automatically or manually. I want to check what automatic is doing, so I'll just hit enter here. And this creates subvolumes for the root directory, the home directory, and the var cache directory. So this actually looks fine to me. So I'm just going to hit enter here to accept it. And now it asks us to select the swap partition, which we don't have. We didn't create that. So I'm going to go for none here. And now it asks us to select additional partitions. Now we have to be careful here because we are tempted to select VDA1, which is our boot partition and its remaining partition. But we don't have to do this. This is actually asking us if we have a home partition or any other partition we created manually. But we don't have those, so I'll just here hit OK. And now we can select the boot partition, which is VDA1. So I can just hit enter here. Now it asks us which kind of boot directory we want to have, /boot /UEFI, which is recommended for multi-boot system, or /boot is required for systemd boot. I'm going to go for boot UEFI here, so I'll just hit enter. And the mount was successful. So mounting partition is done. Now we can configure the mirror list. So let's go ahead here and hit enter. So let's edit the pacman configuration file here by hitting enter. And the only thing I want to make sure of by scrolling down with Ctrl-V is that the repositories are activated. And I see they are. We have the core repository here, the extra, the community, and the multilib is also already enabled. So that looks good. And we can go out of the editor here by hitting Ctrl-X. And it asks us now to confirm the changes, but we didn't make any. So I'll just hit enter here. Now I will pick the mirror configuration because I want to go to the rank mirrors by speed. This is the option I want to do. So I'll just hit enter here. And I just want to use the stable repositories, so I accept the default here. And now when I hit OK, the system is going to go through all the mirrors available in Manjaro and sort them by speed. So let's hit enter here. So this is going to take some time because it has to go through all the servers available, and I'll be back when it's done. And so now they are sorted by speed, so I can select the mirrors I want. So I'm going to just for a couple of them. So I'll scroll down here with the arrow key. So I'm going to select the first 6 servers here. So I'm just going to select them here with the spacebar and moving down. There you go. Now I can move with the tab key here to the OK and hit enter. And there you go. Now we can go back. So let's hit enter. So the next step could be refreshing the pacman keys, but I'm going to skip this. And also I'm going to skip the pacman cache. And I will not enable the file system check hook. As I'm using a BTRFS file system, this will not be probably very helpful. So I go to back here and hit enter. Now it's time to install our desktop system. So let's hit enter here. And the first option is install Manjaro desktop. So let's go ahead and hit enter. Now here we can select the kernel we want to use. So I'm going to install Yay, definitely. And I want to use the latest kernel, which is 5.6 right here, and hit enter. Now for desktop environment, I'm going to go with the flagship desktop environment in Manjaro, which is XFCE, and hit enter. And it's asking us if we want to add some additional packages. And I will say yes here, so I'll just hit enter. Because I want to install Snapper and Snapper GUI. So I'll type in Snapper and hit tab to select the package. And I see already Snapper GUI there, so I can just hit tab here again. And now we can see on top here the two packages are now selected. So we can just hit enter. And now it's asking us whether we want to install the full install or the minimal. I'll go for the full one here, so I'll just hit enter. Now here we have a view of the packages that are going to be installed, and I just want to make sure the Snapper is there, and it's there, and the GUI as well. So I'll just hit now Ctrl X to exit, and the installation will start. So now it's going to take some time to download and install the packages, and I'll be back when it's done. And there you go. The packages are now installed. So now we are asked to select the display driver. So we have an option here to auto-install free drivers, proprietary drivers, or we can select a specific driver as well, or also install all free drivers. So if you have an NVIDIA card, you might want to go to proprietary drivers here. I'm going to go for auto-install free drivers and hit enter. I press enter to continue. There you go. The desktop is installed. Now we can proceed by installing the bootloader. So let's go ahead and hit enter here. And we have several choices here. We can use grub, refine, or systemd boot. I'm going to use grub here, so I'll just hit enter. And install UEFI bootloader grub. Yes, so I'll hit enter here. It's going to take a second to do that. There you go. Now we need to set the bootloader as a default, so I say yes here. And grub is now installed. Now we need to configure the base system, so let's go ahead here and hit enter. So we generate the FS tab file here by hitting enter. And we can generate this in several ways, but I'm going to use the UUID, so I just hit enter here. Now we can set the host name, and I'll call my machine EFTech and hit enter. Now I can set the system locale, and English US is fine for me, so I'll just hit enter here. And same goes for the locales, so I'll just hit enter again. And now we can set the desktop keyboard layout, so I just hit enter here. And I'm going to go for my keyboard, which is in my case CH, the Swiss keyboard, and hit enter. Now we can set the time zone and the clock, so let's hit enter here. And I'm going to go to Europe. And I'm going to scroll down here to the city closest to me, which is Zurich, and hit enter. And yes, I want to set the time zone, so I just hit enter here. And now we can choose between UTC and local time. And I'm going to go for UTC because I'm not dual booting with Windows. Otherwise, I would have to go with local time. So I'll just go for UTC here and hit enter. Now we can set the root password. So let's hit enter here and enter our password and retype it. And we can also create a new user. So I'll just hit enter here and enter my username and hit enter. Now I'm asked to select which shell I want to use. So I'm going to go for bash and hit enter. And now I can enter my password and retype it. Take a moment to create the user. And there you go. Now we can hit on back here. Now we have also the option here to tweak the system, reviewing configuration files and rooting into the installation, but I don't need to do this, so I'll just go to the back option here and hit enter. Now we install the system, so we don't need CLI and custom system here. System rescue is also not needed in my case, so I'll just go to done here and hit enter. Now I can close the installer, so I'll hit enter here, and it asks me if I want to save the installation log, and I'll say yes. And the setup is done. So let me exit here my shell. And I'll go back to my virtual machine and go full screen here. And now I can type in reboot to reboot the machine. And it's going to take a moment to boot up. There you go. So I can enter my password here and hit enter. And now we are in Manjaro. So here I need to adjust my screen resolution. So I'll go to the settings very quickly. And I'll go to display. And I'll select my resolution right here. And hit apply. Keep the configuration. I still need to change the scale. So let me do this also very quickly. I'll go to the appearance tab here and go to settings and hit the scale into 2. There you go. And click close. And I need to log out once for the changes to take effect. So let me do this very quickly. Go to applications here and log out again. Enter my password. And we are back in Manjaro. So just a note here, if you want to customize the system with applications and other things, you can go to applications here and you see what is installed in your system, and you can select here other things you might want to add or remove from the system. And when you're done, you can hit here Update System, and you will have the system configured the way you want to. But we came here for Snapper, so let's have a look at it. So we have the Snapper UI here already installed, but we cannot use it. We need to configure Snapper first. So let's go to a terminal, and let me pull up a terminal here. And I'll increase the font size here a little bit so that you can see better. And I'll center my window. There you go. And the first thing we need to do is to create a configuration for Snapper. So let's do this by typing in sudo snapper -c for the configuration name. And we are going to create a root configuration. So I'm going to call it root. And then we'll type in create -config. And then the path of the directory, which is for the root user, the /, so the root directory, and hit enter. We enter our sudo password and hit enter, and the configuration is now created. Now, we cannot use the configuration yet unless we are root. So we can change this by changing the configuration file. So let's do this by typing in sudo nano /etc /snapper /configs and then root and hit enter. So now we need to find the allow option. So let's search for this by hitting Ctrl W and all capital letter allow underscore and hit enter. And you can see here we have an allow user option. So we need to put in the user we want to give access to this configuration. So I'll go here between the double quotes and enter my username here. So I want the user Hermano to be able to use this configuration file. So then we can hit Ctrl O and enter to save the file and Ctrl X to exit the editor. Now we are half of the way there because there is a .snapshot directory in the system that we need to be also able to access. Otherwise, we cannot access the snapshots directory. So the first thing we want to do is to change the permissions on the .snapshots directory. And to do this, we'll type in sudo chmod and then a+rx. So we give all user reading permission and executable permissions. And then / the root directory .snapshots and hit enter. Now we need to also change the ownership of this folder. And I'm going to use the group ownership for the user I want to use, in my case, mine. So I'll type in sudo chown for changing ownership, a colon, and then I'll specify my user group, which is Hermano. So every user at his own user group, which is normally the username, and then /.snapshots and hit enter. There you go. Let's clean up the terminal. Now we should be able to use Snapper without using the sudo command. So let's try it out. Let's type in snapper -c root. So we are calling up the root configuration. And I'll say list to list the snapshot available in the system. And you see the command is available, only there are no snapshots available yet. So we can create a snapshot here on the terminal, or we can do it also with the GUI. Let's create the first one on the terminal. So let's do this by typing in snapper -c configuration is root and then create. So we want to create a snapshot and we want to also give a description to the snapshot. So I'll type in -- description and I'll call it after install and hit enter. Now if you want to list again the snapshot here, let's pull up the last two commands here and hit enter. We can see we have the first snapshot here which was created at 11:08 a.m. So I can actually enlarge the window here so that it looks a little better. There you go. And now we have a snapshot created in the system. So let's now close the window here and pull up the Snapper GUI. So let's search it and select it and hit enter. So you can see here we have our root configuration right here. And we have the snapshot we took manually before in the terminal. So we can click on the snapshot here and we can click open. And we can have access here and we can see what's in the snapshot. So we can see the changes that were eventually made. Now there are no changes in this specific snapshot, but I just wanted to show you how you can access it. Now let's close this window up. Now clicking on the Snapper GUI icon here, we have access to the properties. And here we can define actually how we want our cleanups to occur for our snapshots. So by default, the timeline cleanup is going to allow us to have 10 snapshots every hours, 10 snapshots daily, 10 snapshots monthly, and 10 snapshots yearly. So we can change this accordingly to how many snapshots we want to keep. And the reason why this is active and working, it's because cron is installed by default in Manjaro. If cron would have been installed, then we would need to activate the systemd timers for Snapper. But because we have cron installed in the system, the timeline cleanup is working automatically. So we can close this up. Now let's try something. Let's close the GUI here. And let's try to install, for example, another package from the terminal. So I want to install Kdenlive, let's say. So I'll just go here and I pull up the terminal. I just like to install packages from the terminal. And I'll type in sudo pacman-s and just Kdenlive. And hit enter. Enter the sudo password and hit enter and accept the installation by hitting enter. It's going to take a moment here to download and install the packages. Shouldn't be too long. There you go. So I can close up the terminal here. And let's see if Kdenlive is installed. And indeed it is. So what I want to do now is to pull up again the Snapper GUI and create a new snapshot. So I'll just hit new here. And the configuration we have is root. That's the only one we have in the system right now. And I'll call this configuration after Kdenlive install. And for the cleanup, I'll go for the timeline and hit OK. So we have two snapshots right now. We have one after the first installation and one after we installed Kdenlive. Now, if we click on the second snapshot here, we click open and let's go to user bin and we'll scroll down until we find Kdenlive. It should be here listed as application. And here it is. Now let's close this up. And if you go in the first snapshot here, where Kdenlive was not installed yet, if we click open, and again we go to user bin, and we scroll down to look for Kdenlive, you can see it's not there. So we have one snapshot with Kdenlive and one without, and we could actually switch back to the other snapshot in case Kdenlive makes a problem, for example. So we can close this window up. Now, if you want to restore a snapshot, I have a video about this, and you can click the card on the upper right of your screen to see that. That was an installation video of Arch Linux with BTRFS and Snapper, and I also showed her how you can restore snapshots using an Arch ISO, which you can do also here since Manjaro is based on Arch Linux. Now, this was an installation of Manjaro with Manjaro Architect and Snapper and the Snapper GUI. And again, if you want to see how you can restore snapshot with an Arch ISO, you can check out the video I did about installing Arch Linux with Snapper and BTRFS, where I'll show you also how to restore snapshots from there. So there you go, guys. This is how you can install Manjaro with Manjaro Architect, Snapper and BTRFS. I hope you liked the video, guys. If you did, please hit the like button below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Subs always helps us out. And if you want to support the channel, you can visit our Patreon website, or you can also donate to the channel through the website as well. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.